Hello everyone and welcome. In this tutorial we're going to be looking at colouring this turtle's picture in Photoshop. The colouring of this picture took around 3 hours in total, so I'm not going to show you the whole thing and talk you through that. What I'm going to do is take you through some of the basic process that I used to do the whole picture, and then we'll do a kind of a time lapse. I'll talk over you and tell you what I'm doing at the time. If there's any time that I need to show you more detailed technique, I'll sort of stop the video and take you through that. So that's it. Well, let's get started. Okay, so in the basic setup of the file, I've done all the flats. They're already done. I've got the line art on a separate layer above. And what I've done is I've put a layer above, which is a kind of this purplish layer here, and that's set to colour mode about 75%. What that is, it's going to be kind of my kind of shadow colour. The way that kind of like that works, it adds a really nice kind of like purple colour to the whole one, all the different colours, and so it's 75%. Lets a little bit of that original colour through. But kind of it works kind of to really draw the picture together quite nicely. Obviously, it looks a little bit kind of like strange at the moment, but hopefully you'll see when we get to the kind of like the colouring stage as we add our colours to it. That kind of it doesn't look quite so weird. I basically kind of created the flats. I'll duplicate this kind of this layer and then merge it with those with that color layer on 75%. Pull them those two together, and that will be the kind of layer that I do pretty much all of the coloring on. I've locked that flats layer, so that's always available for me to select my different areas on using the magic wand tool, and then I'll color everything on that purple layer. I'll color everything with the kind of like with the airbrush tool, generally kind of quite a large one. As you can see, about sort of 2000 pixels there. And I use a hard light brush mode with that airbrush mode set to 100% opacity and sort of 73% flow. That changes, to be honest. It's not sort of set defaults that I use, so it doesn't really matter. It's basically what I'm going to do is going to use a yellowish kind of like a colour, or a yellowish light, and it's going to I'm going to colour everything kind of like and tweak that. So my kind of like my turtle here, you can see kind of like quite a middleish kind of like green here. What I'll do is I'm using a yellow light, so I'll shift that along kind of like towards the kind of like yellow part of the spectrum. And when I'm kind of like going to colour him, and obviously I've kind of like bumped up the kind of the brightness. Then I'll use that kind of like colour. Use the lasso tool, as you can see here, to kind of select the areas I want to colour. I'm doing this just really rough on this stage at the moment. Just to kind of lay that kind of like that base layer down using the hard light, and you go in with that hard light brush really loosely. One thing I'll mention here is kind of use the lasso tool and selected the whole big area, then use the magic wand tool, clicked the shift and the alt key together, and then selected the area I was going to use. That the shift and the alt together with the lasso tool, with the magic wand tool, kind of doesn't intersect, kind of like selects whatever area you selected with the lasso tool. It will intersect with the kind of like the flats beneath, to let you select that one area. You can see there it's going to cut out the bandana and all the background and stuff like that. So I've only got the head selected now, and now I'll use the airbrush tool just to add a layer of colour to that. And that's basically the kind of like the technique that I've used throughout the whole video, really. Basically kind of like selecting areas with the lasso tool, and then using the kind of the airbrush set onto hard light mode to add the colour in. It's just a case of I'm just building that up gradually. So that's so what I'll do is take you through the kind of like the time lapse now, and we'll have a look through that and kind of a much quicker way. And I'll try and talk you through the key bits that I'm doing, that I'm working on. Okay, so here we're starting out. And like I said, we'll start on the Leonardo one, just using the lasso tool there. And just using a really big brush, with the brush on hard light mode, selecting the areas that will be picking up the shadows. You can see I'm doing kind of quite large areas here, and I'm doing it kind of quite light to begin with, and that's basically where I'm going to I do that through the whole of the kind of the picture now, not putting in too much detail, just selecting kind of quite big areas, doing it quite loosely as a whole, not worrying too much, just trying to pick out those key areas to kind of focus in on the basic shapes. As I mentioned about the kind of like the color choice, I'm generally kind of picking colors and doing a shift towards the yellow spectrum as a whole, varying the kind of like the intensity of the color depending on the material. So this is what we're doing throughout this kind of stage at the moment. You can see using getting a bit more kind of intensity on the front of the shell there. That's then itself is kind of like is very yellow, so we'd really kind of emphasise that the yellowish light that we're looking at. You can see on the belt there of trying to get this kind of quite a sharp contrast between the darkness of the belt and the light that I've used there. See, that's going to be a kind of like a leathery colour, which would maybe have a bit more shine than something like a skin colour. So we've got this sword here, and that's obviously picking up quite a bit of that yellow light, which is kind of, so we'll change its kind of like its colour quite drastically. It basically just will reflect that back. The highlighted areas I've kind of just tried to pick out kind of like random areas that got quite a hard reflection on them. Same with that, with the sword handle there, it's gone kind of. I've gone for quite a goldy kind of like look there. So I started with got quite a reddish kind of orange light to it, but later on we'll add in a few more kind of like much more yellowish highlights to that. Obviously, all the white areas here that we've got from the bandages will very much going to be picking up that yellow light as well. As you can see with the red there, that hasn't taken too much of a shift towards the yellow light. It will very much kind of like stay quite red, really. A tiny bit of maybe a shift towards a kind of more orangey, but as a whole, kind of looks very very red. It makes a really nice contrast with that kind of like purple shadow that we've got. As you're watching the video, let me know about the general kind of layout of the video with this kind of full panel view on the right and the detail on the left, and the general speed that it's going as well. Can you see what's going on and what's being done? If we can change this to help, then just let me know. The other thing I should note that we've got done on the basic on the flats level of the layer that we've got here, you'll probably notice in the background that that Mikey and Donatello look a bit more faded out. Their actual colours aren't particularly any more faded, but what we've done on the line art level, you can see that the very top level that we've got there in the layers panel is where it says colour fill 2. That one is basically a layer over the line arts layer that's set to clip and mask mode, and if you right click on the layer, you can choose create clipping mask, and that means that it will just colour in the layer that it's clipped to. And so I've set that down as I think it's sort of darkish purple colour. So it just naturally kind of drops that to the background. So I've got Mikey and Donnie kind of like set back from Leo and Raph at the front of the picture, and that's just really helps to separate the two, because Leo and Raph's kind of like line art is set to that solid black colour. So that really helps, and I'll use a little bit of that in the colouring as well, trying not to make them quite as intense as the two characters at the front. We don't want them to go too far drop back. They are we are still wanting the focus to be on them. So if we was doing it for something like a comic rather than kind of a pin-up piece like this, it probably would be a bit more, probably drop them a little bit further back. But as it's a pin-up, we want them all to stand out, particularly with them being all four being relevant to the picture and the scene. As you can see, the actual technique here is relatively simple to carry out. You are just selecting the areas with that lasso tool, and then just softly running over your airbrush tool. And so it works for all areas. And the benefit of using the airbrush tool, if you use it just on its own, you tend to get much too much of a soft look to your picture, and it can be that horrible really like computer generated effect that just doesn't look very nice. Whereas using it with a mixture of the lasso tool, you can have that those areas in the middle which are nice and soft, or together with kind of the hard edge of the lasso tool, so it gives a really cool looking effect to it. And depending on how you can make certain areas, if you choose a wider selection and really kind of focusing on the with using the airbrush tool, you can kind of change how harder edge kind of like different areas have. You could also set if you want to be a bit softer, you can set your lasso tool up with a bit of a feather effect to it, which would give everything that you select a much more softer edge. So I use it at 0 pixels of feather, because I do want that really hard edge. But obviously, depending what sort of style you're going for, you can have a bit of a play with that. Okay, now I'm starting to go in and add a bit more detail to certain areas. So adding a second layer of light here, and in selecting the colours and stuff here, as you can see on the pads and stuff like that there, I'll take another shift towards that light colour. So you can see here that's moving away from the orange on the handle, more towards that kind of intense yellow. I should say on the areas as well, like like things like the sword and the sword handle, I'll go in on top as well, and use just the airbrush by itself as well. So you really get that kind of a bit more kind of intense kind of like glow effect to the kind of the metallic objects and stuff like that. Stuff that really kind of shines. I think the purple colour here was the one I had most difficulty with selecting the colours for. That's probably the furthest away from the light source that I'm using in the kind of the colour spectrum. So it's kind of trying to pick out the right light with that. And I think I went back and tweaked the colour on his bandana and his knee pads and things like that at a later date. As you can see in this shell there that I was just doing, I was starting to actually kind of build in a bit of texture into the shell there, and same on these on the bandanas and things like that, and all the bandages. It's kind of starting to really kind of like build up that picture of trying to give it a better feeling about the material and things like that. And here on the metal piece, it's trying to be quite a bit more intense with the colour there, so pressing on a bit harder with the brush when you're going around. One of the good things I find about this approach is that you're only kind of working on one layer most of the time, so it's not kind of taxing your system too hard. Really, you haven't got to try and organise all those different layers, and there's a little bit of it about it is kind of trusting yourself and being willing to make those mistakes. I was found when I started off, I had so many different kind of layers going on because you're so worried about making a mistake and giving you that kind of that safety blanket that you can always go back and turn off different layers and things like that, and a lot of the time it doesn't particularly help, to be honest. You're better kind of trusting yourself and just going for it. And if it turns out if you do something it hasn't particularly worked, then it's probably just as quick to go back and start again. Really, you can probably see I've got a backup folder there that's got a copy of the original kind of like the original flats with that purple colour over, and that's just there just in case I do want to kind of like just if I mess up on Leo's shell, for example, I just go in there, copy the shell, kind of paste it back in, and just give it another go. If I do really do something I really don't like, it's probably just as quick to do that as it is to have kind of like 40 different layers of every experiment that you've done on the piece. Often it doesn't help, and you end up kind of just turning on and turning off layers and stuff like that all the time, and I just find it takes just as long. So you can see here we're going it back in now and adding a bit more kind of like detail to Leo. You can see his whole skin tone is shifted much more towards the yellow now, with those kind of second and third layers, and like I was doing on the shells, adding in those little bit of nice little bits of texture onto his skin, and trying to add those little spots in there, just those little bits of detail that you won't particularly see on like a thumbnail or something like that, but you will see on a print or when you kind of you see it on a sort of decent screen and things like that. As I mentioned with the sword and stuff, I think I've done it with the skin as well. It's just using the airbrush by itself on the whole of the skin, particularly on those areas where the lasso tool has. It's kind of giving you a hard line. If you just use a bit of the airbrush by itself on kind of working on the highlight and the shadow at the same time, it can soften the edge a little bit. This bit here, I'm just doing around the edge of the bandana there, just kind of do a little bit of edge lighting on stuff, and same on the shell here. Just kind of pick out those edges, pick out a few details. You don't need to go mad, but you can just kind of hint at the different bits, hint at edges and things like that. It just gives the picture a lot more detail. As you can probably see from hopefully from the full picture on the right hand side, you can see how this is kind of like starting to really come together now, as we started with that really kind of like purple picture, which would look very, very strange to begin with. And once you kind of start adding in those colours, that purple doesn't really kind of like take over. It still works quite nicely to bring the whole picture together, but it's not. I don't find it too kind of overpowering. Like I say, I wouldn't particularly use it for everything, but I thought particularly with this potentially being like a real night scene or something that was maybe underground, this kind of like really kind of like strong dominant kind of like colour in the background would work quite well. You probably saw that I had a bit of a texture brush kind of that I've just again loosely kind of like added a little bit of something over the top of the layers, just like I say, really kind of like a light that you don't particularly notice. Just add a bit more detail. You can you have to be kind of careful with stuff like that though. It can look a bit fake. Also added in a bit of kind of smoke in the back, kind of like in between the two layers, like I mentioned earlier about colouring the lines in rather. It kind of just trying to separate the kind of the two front characters from the two back characters. Just very, very kind of like pretty. I think it's about 50% kind of layer over the top of everything, the line art included. Just with that, just with a couple, I think it was white or a very kind of like light grey colour, with a sort of textured brush that I've used for that. So, but you can even make one yourself, or obviously kind of get one from the internet. It's not particularly key what brush you use for something like that. On this bit, just going in and picking out little bits of the wood grain here, not doing every piece of grain, but just trying to get it hint that it is wood there. Now into the kind of stages of doing little tweaks, really, to be honest, just picking out that the thumbnails are sort of like slightly different colour. And putting in extra little bits of blood that I probably missed when doing the flatting and things like that. So. And now this is probably the most kind of like detail I put into the picture in the two shells, particularly on Donny's shell. We're going to picking out the edges to begin with. Same on Mikey's as well. You'll see, obviously, we're jumping around a lot sometimes in the picture, but sometimes kind of the best way with it is just building up little bits of different areas and then kind of stepping back and having a look at it again and seeing what areas need work. And that's probably the best approach. You can focus too much on one area, and it will completely sort of stand out from another area. So you best just kind of doing bit by bit and really kind of stepping back. Here, just working on kind of like different sort of like bits of smoke and stuff in the background. Again, trying to give them a bit of sort of separation and distance. Trying to make the kind of like the smoke at the front be a lot more kind of like the yellowish colour that's being affected by the light a lot more strongly, and the bits towards the back a lot more sort of a lot more this kind of like this purpley colour. Again, trying to just kind of give some sort of separation. Here I'm just doing another layer over the top of the line art on that clipping mode again, and just trying to give a bit more sort of separation. I've used completely the wrong colour when I first done this, but it wasn't an issue. Basically, I've used all one colour, knowing that I can just go in and tweak with that when I've selected all the areas that I want to do colour in the line art. So that's what basically I'm doing here is colouring all that in, and then I'll go back and I think you can see there, just kind of like tweak the colour to get it right. I think I was using the hue and saturation on that. Here, just kind of using a bit of a textured brush to give some sort of detail in the background. Not wanting too much. I don't want anything to really take away from the characters themselves. But you kind of like working in more that purplish colour there. So. Yeah, now just a few spots and things like that. I've had a bit of a mess around with kind of with scatter brushes just to see which one gave me the right effect, really. again, this is the way, probably the best way to work from kind of like from big to small. So we put in all those big blocks of colour to begin with on the turtles, and give everything a little bit of form, and then just kind of start going in and working in more and more. But don't focus on one area too much. Just kind of like try and work your way around the whole picture. Yeah, just doing a bit of a tweak there on the kind of on the colour and balance. And just so if I sort of step back a bit, you kind of just notice kind of like there that kind of like that Mikey doesn't really kind of like stand out enough. He hasn't got that much kind of detail on some of his skin and stuff. So kind of going back and then just trying to just bring that out a little bit. He was just a little bit too much in the background there. And again, same with the other ones, just adding nice little bits of detail onto his skin. There's always a bit of a balance to be had, to be honest, around spending ages putting in too much detail, and sometimes not putting in enough. And the actual level of detail definitely does help, but it's really being kind of like careful where you put it, and make sure you try and put it in kind of key places that really stands out. Alright, so this is a stage where I have to swap my brush over here. This is the time when I've used a hard edge brush. I think overlay mode. I think I've used it on. It's basically I was just kind of being really loose and just wanted to add some kind of like texture in here, but going around and selecting all these different areas with the lasso tool would have just taken ages, and it didn't need to be that precise, to be honest. It was about just kind of going in and enhancing these kind of like these texture kind of lines of the shell, and to be honest, the roughness of it potentially adds to that kind of as well, because those shells aren't going to be perfect by any means. And I've used kind of reference pictures when I've been working on this picture. Just pulled up some pictures of turtles, not for them identically, because the whole designs of these the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles isn't that correct, and if it made them look exactly like actual turtles, it would look really strange. But using those kind of like real shells as a guideline for that. Now I've gone into adding a bit of kind of like some ambient light source that's kind of like that's down to kind of like the kind of like the kind of right hand side, bottom right. Just kind of adding that in. It's trying mainly just to make kind of like the character stand out a little bit more. Just kind of like trying to pick out just kind of like key bits really. Just focusing on, I think I've mainly kind of used it on the two characters in the foreground. I think I've added a little bit to the guys in the background. Yeah, just doing a bit here on the shells. Okay, so the image is pretty much kind of like done at this stage. I think we're just adding the last few details in. I'll say is what you've probably noticed a little bit of kind of a shift there. I've added in a couple of layers above all my layers. And one of the first one I'm going to look at is a color lookup one. And I'll just flick that on for you in a minute. You can see it's kind of colour lookup one. I've got it listed above all the different other layers, and you can see it kind of like just bringing out kind of like a few of the kind of like the yellows and the purple colours there. And to get to that, you kind of go to the adjustments layer at the bottom of the layers panel there. Click on that. And choose the colour lookup, which is the kind of about halfway, it's kind of like towards the bottom of the menu there, and then you get a load of kind of like options here in the first drop down. there's not one I particularly kind of like use. I can't remember which one I've kind of used on this particular picture. But basically, it's a bit of trial now. Just kind of like just flick through the different options you've got here and just see if one of them works. I don't always use this option, but sometimes you get some nice effects that will just kind of like to really kind of bring out your picture. You can see I've kind of set it to about just 37%, so it's not on full blast, but I think it adds just sort of pops out the picture a little bit more in this example, so that's kind of which is quite cool, I think. The last thing I did on the top of the picture was a bit of noise on the top there. You can probably see it probably doesn't show through really on the screen there, but all that was a 50% kind of like grey. Use the filter, add noise option, and then use about 50% on Gaussian mode in the add noise dialog box. So that's just set to soft light mode. I think about 20%. And he says, like I say, it probably doesn't really show through on this screen, but if you zoom right in, you can probably kind of like pick it up possibly on the bits of the shadow and stuff like that. Hopefully that'll show through if it's printed in kind of like a nice high res. You'll probably kind of like pick that up. I think it adds a nice little something to on the top of it. But yeah, give it a go, give it a whirl, see if it works for you. So that's the picture. Really, pretty much done. If you found it useful, then please add a like or a comment. If there's anything that you didn't like about the video, anything you think could be improved, then please leave a message about that as well. If the layout doesn't work for you, anything like that, then please let us know. Hopefully we'll catch you next time.